Do we have the
No, but
fifth?
I'm sure we have something. I don't know what it is. I should know, but I don't.
You know what the awesome thing of teaching civics right now to high
Tell
school
me.
kids? I love it. Okay, so one, you get a constant feed of bad perception. So when I've been taught, so I'm a very sort of active and diverse kind of teacher. Like I'll draw, kids will do intentionally random things and they become frustrated because I manage to roll it into whatever lesson I'm teaching. And some kids have actually said to me, and my crew right now is of a particular mindset that there's a lot of random that comes out. Like the things that are either activated by their curiosity. It's as you would say, layers. Their identity, their exceptionality, their curiosity, their comfort zone, because we have such a tight crew. Um, Stuff comes out of their mouth, and then sometimes they say a thing, and sometimes they're like this because they're really happy, like they said something, and then other times they're like this, like they're like they don't, they're like, did I just say that? But either way, the whole class is like, okay, let's deal with it, right? So that random comes out. Teaching civics, the way, okay, I'll say the way I'm bringing the civics course to them is I'm making sure it's sticky. I wanted to make sure that every single lesson, as many times as possible, there were not only significant historical references, because civics comes out of social sciences, so there are methods and procedures and sort of ways of thinking that are whether we're talking about inquiry or just perspective or significance, like that has to pop up as part of uh, them developing their political positioning. So I want it to be that concrete, but I also love it when they bring in pop culture and they can mention something about, we could be talking about dictatorship and they talk about a video game, and I make sure we take the time for them to, like, they far, what's the
Far
video
Cry?
game?
Far Cry?
Far Cry came up, and Far Cry, in one of the iterations, one of the actual I think if they're up to 6 or 7, there's been a couple instances where the thing that you're fighting against is a dictator. So they're using that, and I'm like, okay, tell me more. I'm like, yeah, it is kind of like that, except, and I'll sort of like, as soon as I hear it's going too much towards the creative, I'm like, let's bring back the fact, because I don't want the only thing to remember is that we had a good conversation about a video game. I want you to be able to kind of understand some of the core concepts of the course. So I'm really loving the civics course because it's allowed for us to, in a lot of ways, it's been one of the best courses that I've worked with this crew over the 2 years, because it has really allowed the kids to be their whole self in the course. Like and also for them to understand that, you know, my crew right now, they have a ton of opinions. They're teenagers, right? Sometimes they don't even realize they have an opinion. What I love is this idea, though, that where they actually can take a moment, and I would call it maybe even like a mindful moment, first to realize, like sometimes they don't realize an opinion until the rest of the class is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like it's the external measure that you've sort of said something that's too far, too extreme. In our class, our class has gotten used to calling other people out, like, that was extra, yo. That was extra. Like that's that, and that's, everyone will call each other out that way. But sometimes they don't even notice that they actually owned an opinion until it comes out of their mouth and it's in front of them in the class. So I like that moment for them to be able, if that's the conditions under which they understand they have a political perspective. I love it that our class allows the kids to make those mistakes in front of people. So, and there's, each kid is making their own kind of mistakes and stumbles in trying to figure out that the information in their head actually, like, there's as much there that they just thought of as that was put there. And as soon as they can start to see that there's stuff in their head that other people put there, it's opened up a really cool discussion around realizing how influential American politics is. And what's funny is that this particular crew right now, is that it's not that they really recognize so much the players of American politics, but that how politics as popular culture has infected Canadian culture, right? I started the unit, so the unit we moved from, kind of like that introduction unit. Right now, we're talking about Charter of Human Rights, political parties. We're now talking about the vote, and then eventually they're going to put together kind of like the summative for the unit will be a pitch package for a particular party and a candidate, and I'm going to give them some of the broad hot topics from articles that we've looked at. And I said, you're going to have to sort of pitch this candidate, fictional or otherwise, and their positioning on this, like, they're going to sort of reveal their capacity to understand political spectrum by creating a pitch deck for this candidate. So a little bit of a creative task. I said audio, video, whatever you want to use, doesn't matter to me, but that's where you're going to show your comprehension. I said, and this is good. It's going to be really cool because the kids are having a difficult time unwinding American American political perspective from Canadian. And it really got me thinking around this civics course. And okay, on one hand, you could kind of say, if you build a course that's permeable. So it just means the course by design allows for current conditions, current thinking, current, like whatever's right on the nose at the moment to get in. And I know we went through a phase where I think that's what we're doing more and more with courses, to be able for the course to actually see itself and see what's going on outside of itself. And in doing so, you have kids that are willing to share and bring more of themselves in, right? Like they can talk about video games within it. They can, I mean, we saw that pivot a few years ago where you had teachers that were basically like, hey, I have a different idea. Instead of doing a novel study, how about we all play Fortnite together and let's explore a video game and figure out the narrative there. So I think we're getting a lot better at understanding that the course can't be a silo. It has to have other influences. Civics in particular, I think this is maybe the fourth time that I've been involved with the civics, just because of the way my teacher life has come down. This is the first time I've ever redesigned it from beginning to end with a specific classroom in mind. So I've done specific things to the actual resources that we use. Like it's a very much there's a flipped element to it. Everything's hyper docked, so they can move in and out of it really quickly. We do a lot of debate and conversation that just gets launched right out of the resources that I have. It's a very permeable course and dynamic course. So with that being said, it's fascinating to do that kind of course design, crack it open so the kids are from the get-go included in the course. So when they have ideas in their head, they don't even realize that they're their ideas and the course ideas at the same time. But it does make me wonder about when civics was designed, or as it's designed and refreshed, it feels as if there's an element in here, and I don't know where you would put it in the actual course design, to make sure, like maybe it's part of the Canadian identity question, which tends to be like this kind of abstract kind of thing. Can we speak to Canadian identity as a singularity of what we're doing inside Canada? Like, can we I don't know if I haven't been in a good conversation yet that talks about, okay, as we do civics, I want to make sure that we are really digging into Canadian identity and somehow creating a good defense against American influence, our neighbors' influence. And I say it, and it's not like it's not overly cumbersome. I can bring them back, but maybe what I'm talking about is just an enrichment of the CanCon, like the Canadian content, that just doesn't leave as much space for the American perspective. Maybe we need the American perspective as a mirror or a trampoline to kind of like say, yeah, we're not that. We're kind of that, but we're not that. So I don't know. I think it's been one of the best courses that I've been able to play with and design so far. I'm proud of the work that the kids have done. And I'm I don't know the next time I'm going to teach this course. That's the other thing, right? My portfolio is changing. I'm changing schools next year. I'm moving into a very different community classroom. But as a culminating artifact of my learning in course design, and blending in technology and also making sure that technology doesn't get in the way of the humans in the room. I've loved teaching this course. I don't know if I've ever loved teaching a course more than this civics course. So that was a long-winded way of saying, I don't know. I don't even know where I freaking started on that. Politics, American politics.
American politics, which is a great way maybe to shift into politics in general. But before we do that, Gary wishes us a good morning. So good morning back to you, Gary.
Good morning, Gary. Refresh me, Gary, guidance counselor, student success, alt ed. What's Gary?
Student success
Okay.
lead or
Okay.
head, um, but also teaches. Shoot, Gary, you're gonna kill me for this. Gary does like he's part of the mock UN thing that schools do.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
international type relations. He teaches a high end course like that, I
Like
believe.
international studies? Is that
Something like that. Yeah, I'm
okay?
sure he'll correct me in a second, but
Gary, you know what? Gary's listening on that and he's cringing. He's like, oh, oh, almost nice try, Clef. Oh, chids.
yeah,
About
yeah.
civics. Yeah, yeah. Like we're getting close. We're getting close. So yeah, so go ahead. You shift. We can talk to Gary more throughout the
I want to drop the idea. And I think when I say it, everybody's going to say, "Yeah, yeah, I already know that." But maybe they don't think about it as often as you and I did this morning on the on ramp.
yeah, yeah.
Politics are at play all the
Mhm.
time, even in, and maybe more so, some people would argue, in spaces where we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion. Um, it's a space where people talk about, how do we bring people in from the margins? But there's power at play, even when you're doing that work. Um, and this is a great, the talk you and I had before coming on. Wow, it's like powerful to me as an individual who does the work that I do, and how does politics rear its ugly head, the power play, even in my role trying to help. Not all my students are marginalized, but you get what I mean. The kids on the periphery that are not complying, are not doing what we all want them to do. I'm a power player in that realm. Some people would say I hold all the cards when it's me and the kid. Um, and so I'm going to be reflecting on that for a while now. I'm going to be reflecting on that for a while, but in every space there is no pushing the politics aside. There's politics in every realm, and it's sad when the politics even exists in realms where we're trying to deal with the big P politics to try to help people, but there's still the little p politics. It's not going anywhere.
Mhm.
It's not going anywhere. So it's like, I know some people just avoid it. They want nothing to do with it. But then when you have nothing to do with it, the people who hold all the power continue to hold it. And maybe sometimes they need to be checked. That came up. That popped up for me. I just wanted to say it out loud.
Mhm.
Um, Gary says he was previously department head of Canadian and World Studies, which I did not know. It's very interesting.
Mhm. So
And that,
AKA like history department. I
I
know it's more
guess
than that, Gary. I know it's more than that. So so Gary, you hear me talking about civics? When you know, right? When you know. So
Gary also tells me I'm right, which is always nice to hear.
you or
That
me? I thought you said I was right.
um, he agreed with you about civics,
Okay. That's all I
but
need.
but now, but now he's agreeing with me that I was correct. That he does work with students in Model UN, but he's taught a global leadership course. Yeah, like global leadership. That's not Mickey Mouse course. Come on, especially if Gary's teaching it. But Gary spends most of his time in student success, and I have to tell you, I just had this wave of memories of me stepping into Gary's student success room,
Mhm.
saying hello to him, trying to look for one of my students, or giving Gary a little bit of an update on one of the students that maybe I'm supposed to be working with. that isn't around. And I got to tell you, I did soak up as much of being in Gary's room as I could. So it's not I'm not sitting here thinking I wish I could go back to Gary's room when I was in Gary's room. I enjoyed every moment of it and I soaked it up. So I don't need to cry about it now. But, you know, some teachers Gary works with have said to me, "Hey, when are you going to come back and see us?" And I'm like, "Sorry, I can't just well, I guess I could just go and visit,
Mhm.
but I've got other kids that kind of require me to be around. So maybe one day when I'm driving past there, if I have a little bit of time, I jump in.
What was memorable about Gary's room?
Well, first I want to say Gary loves when students are curious and dynamic.
Oh, I need them to be wreckers, Gary. I I've told Chids this, part of what I need, what I really crave. So Gary, I don't know. I'm sure you've listened to all 5 seasons. So my backstory, Gary, is I used to run restaurants. And Chids and I have talked about, kind of at length about the perspective on individuals that like to run restaurants. And I've written a few poetry pieces, kind of like, I think, Chids, what'd you say? Rogues, pirates? I forget what you called, but it's like there's just something,
Badass, like
some
just
yeah, but there's also that element of something not right with someone that would sort of willingly put themselves through that on the daily. So I'm that guy, Gary. I'm that guy. I came to education because I got to a crossroads, multi crossroads. Do I open up my own space? Do I go with the owners down to the States? They were opening up a new concept. Um, or do I continue working at the successful restaurant that I was at? I had 3, and none of them really felt like a great fit at that particular time in my life. And, had the conversations with my spouse. My spouse kind of said, "Yeah, this is cool. This is cool. But I don't think we're going to do the family thing if you end up staying there. Just FYI, letting you know, we won't do the family because it's what, like, spending time in the restaurants. It takes a lot from you. You get a lot, but it takes a lot. So I was there a lot. So, anyways, I shifted over into EDU, came in as a chef. But the one thing that I brought with me that I offered to you is my, like, the restaurant for me was always like a symphony of orchestrated chaos. And it's to look at it from the un to look Shiz and I have said this, to look at it from the doorway, it's like it could look horrible. It could look like you don't know where, you're not fluent in it, right? If you were to watch my kitchen way back in the day, guaranteed, unless you were informed, kind of like civics, it's one thing we talked about, informed citizenship, right? Like, unless you actually know what you're looking at and you have the fluency, it's going to look like a hot mess. However, you stand for a little bit there and you do some more observation. You watch for patterns, you look for repetitions, you look for like the emotionality of it. You get to know the lay of the land, and all of a sudden you start to realize, like, okay, this is the baseline for this particular thing. And then you start to say, well, if this is the baseline, how is that being achieved? And then you start to listen to how I'm calling things out. And then you hear the call back. You're like, okay, so there is an operating system here. But in order to sort of like, sometimes I think in EDU, we say that the that the course design gets you the creative juice that you're looking for. And I think sometimes that happens, but I would almost argue that sometimes it's because of the course design that we don't get the creative juice. And the only way to really get a good measure of what that creative juice is that, as I mentioned, 10 minutes ago, I'm doing civics and we're talking about a Far Cry video game. So my operating system, and so someone walks in and stands at the doorway and they hear us talking about um an assassination or something that sort of just seems out of hand and kind of edge. And then they hear us talking about a video game and they're standing there in the doorway. And I know there's a struggle to kind of connect the dots. And you have to stay for a little while, like if you're just kind of like a traveler visitor at the door. Um, but I think sometimes the creativity is already there and you pull back on some of the operating system, and all of a sudden the kids are willing to engage and play with it. So I love that. But where I started, I also love the anarchy. I really do. Because part of the anarchy, I'm a dopamine freak. I'll take that. I'm also like, I love complex puzzles. Um, personality wise, I can do the sort of, part of the phrase, that bullet time when stuff gets really, really like just zipping past you. I can kind of slow it down and kind of see some moving pieces in slow motion. It's not that cinematic, but that's the best example I can give you. So in those moments of like high stress, I can step down into like this lower gear and kind of start conducting things. So give me anarchy. It's also part of the motivator, in my particular stage of my career, this long story of education that I've been involved in. At this particular step where I would say, okay, it's time for me to take on a new classroom, another version of this world of EDU. So I'm switching schools and switching portfolios quite drastically. So that's the backstory, Gary.
That's good backstory. I but,
It
you
feeds
know,
me. It feeds me, right?
but Gary already knows because he's all caught up on all 5 seasons of the Decoded
I'm
podcast.
sure the dude, like the time that he spends with us here in the morning is just a fraction of his life that he's given us freely.
Um, so Gary says somewhere in there that he needs to journey with me in my mobile classroom. It would be so I've had this idea and then I just throw it away real quick.
I love
I
it.
would I would love to have a student teacher, but I don't want to spend all day with another teacher. So
Yeah.
so that's out the window. But it would be cool if a student success teacher actually came with me
Yeah.
one day to see, like, this is what a day looks like. And um it's really weird because each day is different, even though they're kind of the same. So I remember, I don't know how many months ago, my principal said to me, "Can you please track a week of your work?" And I was like, I got that funny feeling like, "Excuse me?" She's like,
Yeah, that was what my little guffaw was. I'm like, okay, there's something bureaucratic about this.
"Yeah." I'm like,
There's no
"Oh."
fascination here. It's purely bureaucratic.
So it what I'm gonna make I made some inferences, like,
Mhm.
so somebody might say to my boss, "What does he even do all day?" Maybe, or like, "Can he do this?" "No, he's doing other things." "What's he doing?" "Well, let me show you what he does." And so I believe my principal asked me, like, on a Thursday or a Friday, would you consider doing that? And then I, I guess like a pit bull, decided I was going to do that the week coming up. So it's like I didn't wait a month to do it. I was like starting Monday morning. So I put together a week's worth of like a reflection piece that's not really deep, but just at this time I went here and then these people canceled. So then I went there instead. Like it's like I built a schedule, but it fell apart in the first hour of the day. This is kind of how I rolled that day. I did that
Mhm.
for a week and it nearly killed me. Like it nearly killed me because I was at the point where I was literally eating and writing down, "I'm eating now." It's like nobody needs to know what I'm eating, but it's like, no, I think it's important that part of my day include I had to drive from point A to point B. Like I don't magically appear places. I need time to get from one place to another.
A
The other day,
GoPro would have made this moment far
oh, that
easier.
would have been cool. Yeah.
Right? We've talked about this too. Gary, go back to season 2. Shiz was talking about wearing, the eyeglasses, those from
Empathy engines.
Empathy Engines eyeglasses, trademark pending. And but that's the day in the life. Now the day
But
in the life.
it's funny because so after I submitted that to my principal, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks later, I was like, "Oh, this would have been a better week to document because of all the anarchy and the action." But it's like, "No, no, we can't do that." So, it would be cool if a student success teacher or a guidance counselor, somebody that lives in the building, that never leaves the building, just come with me. Like, please come with me so you can see, like, show up at a house where I'm supposed to be, ring the doorbell, knock on the door, nobody comes to the door, text the parents and say, "Do you know where your kid is? I'm supposed to meet with them. They're in the house." I text back, "They're not answering the door." "Mr. C, don't leave. He'll come to the door." Okay. And it's like, that's like a solid 15 minutes to 20 minutes of I'm communicating with the parents in real time. I'm
Mhm.
knocking on the door. I'm ringing the bell. Um, I'm looking at the clock because I'm like, okay, I can't. I gave this kid 40 minutes in my schedule, and then I need to get to the next place. And if they're not coming, then I have this little thing in my brain that when people cancel on me or flake out or whatever word you want to use, I can grab that time, and somewhere along my day I will have built up an hour that wasn't supposed to exist, and then I can get to another kid, right? So it's like I could spend the whole 40 minutes knocking on the door, but if I spend 15 and there's no sign of life, I can grab that other um 25 minutes, 30 minutes, yeah, 30 minutes and go. And then I've got 30 minutes banked that I know is going to get eaten up somewhere else. And ideally, it doesn't get eaten up and it's saved. And then I can use it for a whole other kid that I wasn't supposed to see that day. Right. So it's like, these are the calculations going on in my head. Gary, yeah. So it would be cool. But then I'm stuck with somebody and then watch the whole day go off without a hitch, right? It's like, but your day went exactly how you planned. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't go that way. So
If
I wanted to say that because Gary, I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but one of your secondary school colleagues, an administrator in secondary school, and I won't mention the school, but they reached out to me about a student situation. And when I said somebody from the school needs to go to the house and ring the doorbell, it was silence on the telephone. And I know what that silence means.
Mhm.
That silence
Yep.
means, oh, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chidiac, but that's not happening because those people are so ingrained that they're not going to leave the building. They can't leave the building. I'm telling you, part of my toolbox, one of the best tools in the box, is that I show up at people's door and ring the doorbell,
Mhm.
bring out my camp chair, and sit outside with them and talk.
Literally. Literally.
Literally, that's
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Um, because I'm building that relationship, and I'm like, I'm here. Are you going to bitch at me? Are you going to push back on me? Are you going to comply with me? What are we doing today? Are we going to play
Mhm.
video games? What are we doing today?
I
And they're
would
like, take a hike. I can't.
yeah,
Or
it's
stay longer. I can't. It goes both ways. It's gone both ways. Gary's ready to volunteer.
well, I love and so he just loaded me up. So part of if it's not dog and pony and you're not there to care for Gary, Gary's there to care for the kid. Like I don't know how much Gary, has like how much insight he has into his role, but even just that example that you just gave there of going and sitting, I'd be curious, like from your own toolkit, you can answer this or not, Gary, but here's a reflective question. From your own toolkit, what would you contribute to the success of that student alongside Roland? So yeah, there's no observers here. There's no ride along, right? You have the tools, you're going to do something too because you're trained to do something. And you just got bust out of your classroom or bust out of the bells. You're no longer in the bells. Kind of, the bells are different. You have your own bells, like you're saying, you're like, if you can find your time, you're gonna if you find time, you use that time because you're working within your own bell times. But I'd be curious, like from Gary's perspective, in that role, being that person going with Roland as part of the team, what is it that you bring to the table? And I'm not saying that because you don't have anything. I just think it's a really great question. Part of the on-ramp was you and I discussing kind of like a disconnect, but we started with the politics here, right? And part of this way of talking about school, that if we're still only talking about school, well, first and foremost, if we're still talking about school and the conditions under which it can happen, that means, and let's say it's old version of it, that means we're looking at the brick and mortar building as the only place it can happen. That particular classroom as the only place it can happen. With that particular teacher, that's the only place it can happen. With this particular tool set, that's the only place it can happen. The job you're doing, Chids, looks at all that and saying, great, worked for some, data shows it's not working for the kids that I'm sort of moving towards. So what that means is we no longer can think inside the building. Or we just say, thank you, building. Thank you, bells. Thank you, ministry, for getting me kind of like winding me up. Now I got to get outside out into nature and see what does this look like outside of our cozy, comfy confines of our silo. So I'll bring it back to Gary. With that idea, what would you bring to the table? Maybe he's done this work. I don't know. Do you think that you would need more training to be able to operate in the way that Chids is? Um, and would there be any challenges in actually doing school away for the building for you? And I've been at tables when I was alt ed head and talked about this with teachers. It's like, and it kind of comes, what if one of the questions I started with, and we talked about it here, is like, what if curriculum's not, what if curriculum's not what the kid needs? And that usually stops a student success meeting pretty quickly. Because if that's the singular focus, then we are back in the building, we're back in the bells. And as long as we stay in there and the kid is at home and we know that it's no man's land between, we're not going there. We're not going there, because what that means is the only conditions under which a kid will find success is if they're sitting in a classroom with a singular teacher and whatever resources we have. I said that to another teacher too. Like, what is it about you that thinks, because I've, done similar stuff to you. And they're like, oh, that would be really awesome. And I don't agree with them at all. I'm like, how would you do the job? What do you think you'd bring to it? If this was your portfolio, what would you do? And a couple of them like, I'd probably do the exact same thing you did. I'm thinking that's bullshit. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. You can't. You can't do it like how I'm doing it, because I've kind of had to navigate this space myself. But what could you add to it? What version of it would you do? Gary, would you feel comfortable going to someone's house? Would you feel comfortable walking a kid to school? And I'm not trying to set up a binary like that's the only way, but this is a new way. Your board is like thinking, really? Dude's walking the kid and his dog to school? The important part of that is where that sentence ends. To school. We're not walking the neighborhood here. Well, maybe we are. The kid's going to school, and all we had to do was bring his dog. You thought this was complex? It was the dog. There's no faculties that are telling you that one.
No, there are no faculties telling you that one. Gary says that he's always thought that we need to think beyond the walls, bells, and credits. And you know what, Gary? In my travels over the last couple of years, there are many people that believe that. But I'm going to push back here for a second, Gary. I'm going to tell you that when it actually comes to the rubber hitting the road, all of a sudden people are not interested in beyond the walls, bells, and credits. They're just not. I don't know why. I don't know why.
I think a lot of people feel they can't.
There is that.
There's a big one. I told you back in the day when someone said, "Oh, you podcast? You podcast? And you podcast about like school?" And then the final question, can we do that? Right? There's a whole invisible list of things that people think that are on an invisible list of things that we are not allowed to do. There are things that we're told maybe we shouldn't do, but often that's because there isn't a clear protocol. Like there isn't a clear kind of like path of rules of engagement. Now it does take a certain amount of risk taking, and you went through these growing pains in the beginning. Okay, I feel like I have to do this thing. I'm not just going to jump at it. I'm actually trying to figure out what's a logical set of instructions that I'm going to do this thing by, so that someone that is standing in the doorway and doesn't know what the hell that's going on with my portfolio, at some point I can say, here, just read this while you watch me do this. And they're like, oh, okay, I kind of see it. I think that's a big part of it.
I agree that there's a part that people feel like they can't do things, or they don't know if they can. What's been really cool, though, it's been really cool to see administrators either jump into why not, or the flip side is, oh, I don't, we're not going to do that. Like it's pretty cool. And as soon as I know kind of like the boundaries that have been created for me, then I try to work within them. And then but I also, I will, I will see where they want me to be, how they're kind of pigeonholing me.
Mhm.
But then I come back with, okay, well, you've got this perimeter around me, but now everything's happening outside of the perimeter. And it's like, what I've been craving is that just people just speak to me honestly. Like I've really been craving that. I've been craving just somebody tell me that, um, come hell or high water, you need this kid in the building. You just got to tell me, because then I can, I know what I'm working with. Great example. Got a new referral the other day. Ended up talking to the mother pretty quick. So I spoke to the social worker involved. I spoke to the school administration, and then I spoke to the parent. And we agreed that on Monday morning I want to meet the student. So I say to the mom, okay, am I coming to your house? And the mom says, well, I hope that they'll go to school. The kid hasn't been to school in like a month and a half. The kid's not going to go to school to meet me, but okay. So I'm like, fair enough. So at this time, we will meet at the school. And if for some reason the student isn't coming, can you text me? Can somebody inform me so I can get in the car and just go to the house? And it was hilarious because in this parent's mind, no, no, you want to meet the kid at the school, the kid will be at the school. And in my mind, I'm thinking, it sounds to me like bombs have gone off. The kid won't go. You've tried 8,000 different things, and now the kid's going to get in a car and come to school to meet a stranger that they've never met before. I'm getting to the point where there's always hope, but there's also reality. And I'm trying to live in my reality. And the reality is this, that 99.9% this kid's not coming to school Monday morning to meet me. But everybody wants to believe that they will. Why? They don't even know who I am. Why are they going to come meet me if they won't come for anything else, for all the good stuff and all the relationships they have? So so then that principal, I know that principal is like, that principal wants the kid back in the building. And I laugh because I'm like, everybody wants their kid back in the building, but once you see the trajectory of the kid and how they're responding to me, if at all, some kids are not getting back in the building this year. And it's hard for people to stomach that. When I tell them that, they don't want to believe me. It's almost like they think I'm trying to slack off. I'm like, well, get in the car and come with me. You see, I'm not slacking off. I'm actually, what I'm building is back to the building, but it's going to take a while. The best people that I have worked with and for are the people that say to me, please, Roland, can you do something to ensure that these kids are still connected somehow, in some way, in some shape, some form? I know that they're not going to come back to the building, but I want to know if they're okay. Can you make sure they're okay? Can you find a way to, lead us to okay? And I'm like, I will. I'll do everything I can. And then I go and I do. I try. And then there's my my new favorite thing is the bigger issues that nobody wants to deal with. The bigger issues that nobody wants to deal with. This kid likes me, will tolerate me, but the parents hate each other. The kid has mental health issues. You keep telling me not to step out of my lane, but I'm being pulled into lanes because nobody else is doing anything in those lanes. So it's like, stay out of the lane, and then somebody else is like, get in the lane, be where the kid is, but don't do anything you're not supposed to do. Okay? Can you send in the cars that are supposed to be in that lane? Yeah, yeah, they'll come when they're ready or when they're available. But I'm in the lane all day, every day. They come once a month. That just leave it alone. Stop questioning. Stop asking questions. Stop telling us what you need. Stop telling us what the kid needs. We know what the kid needs. And whether this is sick or not, I've just learned to live in that realm. The chaos and the back and forth in the politics is just that's where I live. And what I'm seeing happening is somebody finally blows, somebody explodes. Teacher, administrator. It's not me usually. When I do it like in controlled places like with you or with my principal in safe spaces where I can just let it all out and refresh and then get back in my car and go. I know that now. I can do that now. It's just layer upon layer and responsibility upon responsibility. I believe I'm doing my responsibility. I'm not saying other people aren't. I'm just saying that you want things to work a certain way, but you're not flexing in that way. My principal has given me she's given me the green light. Go and work. Go and help these kids. She's given me the green light. And because of politics and power play, I don't walk around telling people what to do and how to do it. When they say to me, what should we do next? I tell them. Yesterday, I'll stop after this one, but it's a good example. Yesterday, I finished working with a student, and then I reported to the parents and to the school, this is what's happening next week. If these people think I'm making decisions on what's happening next week for fun, I'm pulling decisions out of a hat, they're 100% wrong. So I tell them this is what's happening next week. This is what we agreed upon with the kid. If there's any big red flags, tell me. But if there are no red flags, we're proceeding with this plan. I got a little bit of pushback. Do you believe the student's ready for this? Da 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 da. And I'm like, what I told you was not made up. What I told you
Mhm.
is coming from the months that I've built relationship with this kid and all the signs that this kid is showing me. So if he's showing you different signs, can you please tell me what those signs are and where they're coming from and how they're being played? Because I'm not getting that. I'm seeing someone flourishing. And if you're seeing something different, you need to let me know. And there are consequences to changing plans. I'm the scheduler. So if I schedule something and you think that something else needs to happen, I need to consider all my students. You just need to consider one. So I will flex and bend, but why are you jumping in telling me what needs to happen next? Things are going well. So all of a sudden now I can't be trusted to continue this process towards the re-engagement. Like so those moments I chuckle, I'll push back in a respectful way, but at the end of the day, everybody outranks me. The parents outrank me, the principal outranks me. The classroom teacher, I don't want them to feel like I'm stepping on them, so tell me how this might work for you and where we can find some common ground. I'm not opposed to that. But it's like you want me when it's hitting the fan, you'd like my expertise. When nothing's hitting the fan anymore, you all want to take over, which I'm not against, but how come you don't trust my judgment anymore as we move this kid in the right direction? I've seen it far too often. It gets sabotaged, and then we're back to square one. Oh shit, Roland, we should have listened to you. Well, you didn't. So we're back to square one. I guess I'm still employed. But really, that's what it is, right? I'm still employed because the kid is back to square one because everybody decided everything's fine now. Ramona's here. Ramona wished us a good morning a while ago. I didn't post it.
Nice. Hey, Ramona.
Ramona,
Good
it's always
morning.
great to have the president of our fan club in the house.
Coming down from
Oh, from on high.
from on high.
We,
Sometimes it's hard for some to accept that school academics just can't be the priority for a student in this moment for various reasons. I hear you, Roland. I didn't read that well. That's from Ramona. Yeah, various reasons. The back to the start of this, I can remember, they start floating this kind of like student-centered learning, and this idea of start where they are. and I can remember professional, like the post-it note teacher activity, and the big piece of paper, and you're given the multicolored post-its, and it's like, start where they are. What does that mean to you? And you're going to read all the post-it notes there back in the day, and they're going to say things like, well, what are their interests? Who are they connected with in the classroom? Um, it might be understand what their baselines are, all that kind of stuff. And then maybe we became a little more progressive, and then we'll say, okay, well, how does mattering and belonging play into it? So how does identity kind of also play into, start with they are? And like the one that you're throwing down on the post-it note is like, go to their house. Like, and and someone walks up, and they're, the greatest thing is when nobody notices that post-it note on the page, and the facilitator goes up and like, okay, so now let's do a group share, and I'll just go through the things. I'm like, yeah, 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 cool. Identity. Yeah, it makes sense. Oh yeah, for sure. Understand the baselines. Oh yeah, some literacy and numeracy. What are their interests? And then they come across that last one. And I've been in those sessions where the facilitator kind of pauses, and you see they're weighing, they're weighing whether or not they're going to say the truth. Are they going to say the truth? And if you're the one that's put the post-it note on there, you're like this the whole time. Are they going to say it? Are they going to say it? And then usually it goes like this. This is an interesting one, right? So it becomes a little bit of the outlier. But starting where they are, dude, starting where they are when I was doing alt ed sometimes meant myself and the principal, we'd walk down to the park at the end of the street, and we'd be like the kid that was living there for a week. And you're kind of checking in. And it's like sometimes we bring cafeteria food down. And it's a little bit like this, right? This is like whatever kind of low level but critical and important level of starting where the kid is. Well, the kid's living in the park just down the street from the school. We can decide that that's not a silo we're going to visit, or we can kind of say you're still welcome, and we're going to do that through action. You're still welcome to participate in school because school is coming to you a little bit. And by the way, here's some fries and a burger from the cafeteria. We'll check back in tomorrow, but we still see you. We talked about in other podcasts, like what are the things that the kids notice that tell them that they're not wanted at school? And what does that conversation look like with teachers in a professional development scenario where we can sort of pull apart, hello, friends. Let's talk a little bit about your practices that reinforce this idea in some kids' minds that they are not wanted, or they don't matter, or they don't belong at school. And we're not going to go off system. We're going to stick just in classroom practices, which basically means we're looking directly at you, teacher. What are you doing? And you are actively doing it. Whether or not it's intentional or otherwise, you're actively doing it. Because sometimes this is the stuff that the kids are saying afterwards. Well, this thing happened and I just never went back. So start where the kids are. Bring them a burger down in the park.
Or bring them some ice cream and
I
cause
thought, I was thinking
chaos.
that too. Yeah, yeah. Let the chaos begin. What kind of ice cream was it that you brought to the school? I don't know if I actually saw, or you told me
Oh,
exactly what it is you bought. What was the actual item you bought? Please
they
tell me
were
it's like either drumsticks or ice cream sandwiches.
neither. I started with drumsticks,
Yeah, yeah.
but the cost for the entire class was gonna be crazy because it's a big class.
You're
I
looking at
ended
$2 minimum, even if you buy them in a box. Like that's
well,
each little ice cream.
they were on sale for a buck each for
That's worth it. There you go.
drumsticks,
Yep.
but it was still a significant amount of money.
It's an investment. Yeah.
So, I ended up getting like, I don't know what they're called. They're chocolate. They have like a chocolate layer on the outside and then vanilla ice cream in the middle.
Back when in my Dickie D days, did I tell
Yeah.
you I used to be a Dickie D ice cream guy?
No, I don't think you did.
Another time. Well, maybe I'll bring it back up. Those were called Ravellos.
Okay.
That's
That's
the
the name of the company, Ravello?
no,
No?
I think it's Good Humor is the
Oh,
company. Like that's that American ice cream company, but they made a lot of stuff like the strawberry shortcake. Remember that? Strawberry
yes.
shortcake thing, and then even the screwball. Did you ever see the screwball? It was a cone, a plastic cone, and it had like orange sherbet, and then the bottom of the cone had a gumball in it. Did you ever see that?
I think
And
so,
you could
yes.
delicious. And then the rocket, which is like that red, white, and blue. popsicle. Anyways, Ravello. That's a Ravello with the it's like it's almost like it's the almost like a riff on a dipped cone, except it's on a stick, ice cream, and then chocolate, like crackle coating.
Yes.
Delicious, delicious.
So, that's what I brought, and, everybody got one. It's funny, one student says to me, "I don't like chocolate." I said, "Okay, just break off the chocolate crackle on the outside and eat the vanilla ice cream on the inside." How do I do that? And I gave him a look. I gave him a look like, "You're in grade 8, you're horsing around right now, and you don't know how to do that?" And then his buddies were like, "Oh, Mr. C just burned you." And I'm like, "I didn't burn anybody. You're creative, become innovative. Let's go. Get to the ice cream in the middle. You'll figure it out." As I'm handing out ice cream, right? And the teacher's looking at me like it's Friday afternoon. So she's gassed. I'm like, "Here, have one." She takes one, and I'm just like, "Hey, thanks for letting me do this." And then I have two students in that room. One was away. The other one was like just happy. He's like, "Yeah, Mr. C brought us ice cream." And it's like, "Yeah, man, let's do this. This is fun. It's hot out. I told you I might bring you something." So, because did I tell you that I gave these two kids crap the other day because they get to school late after lunch? Did I tell you that? No. These two kids, they got caught horsing around one day after lunch. They were horsing around in a park close by, and a teacher with their class was in the park and was like, "Aren't you two supposed to be at school?" And then that teacher told admin, like, "I just saw them. They're like horsing around." We all thought they're just slow to get to school after lunch, but on that day, they were just in the park hanging out. So I had a chat with them because I somebody had a chat with me. So you can imagine, you know me well enough that I walk in, I'm like, "Gentlemen, let's go into the hallway. We need to have a chat." And one of them's like, "Oh, we're in trouble. We're in trouble." They come out. I'm like, "You're not in trouble, but I have some words, and they're serious words. And I don't normally talk to them like that. That's not the relationship we have." And I'm like, "The principal just talked to me, and the principal was not happy talking to me, and I'm not interested getting here all excited and ready to work with you and then find out that you did something that the principal's kind of pissed off about, and then the principal's delivering it to me. Now I'm delivering it to you." I'm like, "This is not what I signed up for. So let's chat about this." And then the one kid is like, "But I was just doing what the other one." I'm like, "That's the first problem. Do you have your own brain?" "I do." "Start using it. I don't care that this one decided they wanted to do this. You got your own brain. Use it." So we're having one of these heavy, I for me it's heavy-handed because I don't normally go there. So it's like I feel like I'm dropping a hammer. At the end of it, I just said, "Guys, come on. It's like you're almost at the end. You've shown great success. You've re-engaged. Really? We're going to throw it all away?" "No, you're not throwing it away, and I'm going to be here to coach you on how not to throw it away." That's the stage we're in now. We're in maintenance stage. I'm here to maintain what you got going on. Long story short, at the end of this, I'm like, how am I ever supposed to trust that you guys are going to be where you're supposed to be? What happens if one day I bring Chinese food for lunch and then the eyes light up, eh? They're like, "You're going to bring us food?" And I'm like, "What if I want to break bread with you one day? I get here, you're nowhere to be found. I've got this hot food that, once it gets cold, it's not as tasty. And it's like, whatever. And I got to be places. Like, what are you doing? You know how I roll." And they're still stuck on Chinese food. And I'm like, "Do you understand what I'm saying? You need to be in a certain place at a certain time. Make it happen." So when I came with the ice cream, the kid that was there, he's like, "I'm here. I'm here. I wasn't late today." And he's all proud of himself. And I'm like, "Yes, I love it. You're here. You might be bored out of your mind. You might not want to be here. You might be exhausted. I get all that with you, but you're here, and your teacher sees that. So eat your ice cream and know that it could be Chinese food next time. We don't know. I don't know. But if I tell you I'm coming to see you," and I was pissed at the other kid. I said, "I told you guys I was going to be here. Where is he? I don't know. You're telling me in the 6 hours you've been awake, you haven't texted him?" but, and I'm having some fun. I'm having some fun. I don't expect this kid to know everything about the other kid, but I'm like, I told him I was coming. He couldn't get here today for this. There's a lot of fun. And I guess the person driving with me would see that. Maybe they wouldn't think it's fun. But guess what? I don't care because I'm having fun. I'm doing my job. I've built a relationship. I'm flexing on the relationship. These guys are going to make it to the end of the year. They are. And everybody's proud of them, even though we're not walking around telling them. But we are proud because they came from sleeping all day in class to being awake, paying attention to what's going on, communicating with adults in a pro social way. Hey, let's get past the credits, right, Gary? Let's get past. He doesn't want to do geography when I'm there. But I say to him, we're doing the geography. Let's go.
You started back before we went here. You're riffing a little bit on the politics. Did you want to go back to that at all? Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on about the politics, or did
There's
we
a
kind
lot
of
I
end up
want to
doing?
touch on.
Ah, there we go. Saturday morning. Grab a second coffee, Gary. Strap in. Here we go. But yeah, only because we ended up kind of like found a different path and wandered away from it. Was there anything about the politics you wanted to drop into?
When things are going great, when things are going great, everybody's good. Everybody's good to release the power, release the Kraken, let Roland feel like he's got some say in what's going on. When everything's going bad, stay in your lane, do your job, don't ask questions. They don't say that, but I can infer. Um, it's to put it bluntly, I'm at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of all power structures and hierarchy. Remember that. They want me
Your
to
position's
remember
not
that.
even capitalized. It's a description. It's not an actual proper noun. Lowercase, baby. You got to get it out of lowercase status.
That's the politics. So knowing,
Yeah.
so you know me, I'm a little bit of a planner. Now that I
Mhm.
know the politics, I know where all the mines are. Sometimes I'll pick at them for fun and watch them explode because it's
Mhm.
fun to watch things explode. I'm a dude. I like explosions. I like loud noises. I like that stuff. It's fun to me. I know where I stand. I know I'm at the bottom. I get it. That's cool. You want to be People want to be higher up. Go be higher up. I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to document my job. That's the other thing too. Sometimes they pull the power play and then I present the data.
Mhm.
I present the data. You can argue with it all you want. It's there. You that's just me. That's my politics. That's my power play. You want to push back? Here's the data. Cuz it's easy to say to me, you're doing nothing. What are you doing? You're doing nothing. No, I'm doing a lot. Here's the data.
Mhm.
Here's the data. Um, Short of busting down a door and entering a house to actually observe a
Nice.
student,
Nice. Let's go.
explosions, right? Short of putting C4 on that door and watching it blow off,
Clear.
I've all the other data's there.
Mhm.
Knocking on the door, texting, calling,
You had
visiting
a,
three
but
times a week.
yeah, you did have a, I would say, transformational though, kind of, what was it like a couple months back when you got to do a ride along, right? Like you got to do that with somebody that does like you think like you where your edge right now exists in EDU, you met the edge that picks it up with social services. So that's kind of cool. So there actually is another space. Like there's just a thin veil between where you go to and what you're prepared to do. And what the next person might be. What was the I forget the what was their actual the title? Were
So
they just a social worker? Is that
they're well, social worker by trade, but they worked for Family and Children's Services,
Right. Yeah,
protection
yeah.
officer, child protection
That
officer.
was a cool ride along, but also a good example of what I was kind of challenging Gary with. So Gary's, let's say, Gary, I'm placing you on a spectrum here. You're the classroom, you're the in school person, and like Chids, like comparatively speaking, Chids would be like this agency social worker for you because he's just outside, and many other teachers as well. But the experiences that you're getting, Chids, are like the experiences that this social agency social worker would have. You're just like, okay, so this is how someone who does I do a little bit of work like them, how they roll. And I can remember you telling me about the story about how determined they were. They were determined, and you had this kind of moment like, okay, we're going there. This is what parts of what my job look like if you blow it up. I saw your Twitter picture. If it blows up in your hand, this is the next level. This is like next level, and I didn't even realize how close I was to that next level. And in this case, you were very close because you were standing there when as they were doing their version of the job, right? I love that. I love that you had that experience.
Can I shape that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Uh, the school team, the team of people responsible for this student and family, we had a meeting with Family and Children's Services, and at the end of our meeting, the gentleman who was from Family and Children's Services said, "Okay, next step, I'm going to go to the house, and I want Roland to come with me." And the purpose was, it was an educational purpose. Because the Family and Children's Services officer said to me, "Have you been in the house?" And I said, "No, I don't go in the houses." And he said, "We're going to go in the house. You're going to come in the house with me." And I was like, "Now, so normally, I don't care who you are. I'm not going in the house. But
Mhm.
if you're a child protection officer, I'm going in the house with you. Because, like, short of me going in with a police officer, it's the next best thing. Like, how much more protected can I be than being with a protection officer for children, right?" And he's telling me what to do. So unless my principal says you're not doing it, I'm doing it. Um, so he's like, "We're gonna go into the house, and I want you to see the house." He was like, "I get where you're coming from, but I need you to see how these people live. Like, you need that next layer to continue to be compassionate and empathetic. Like, you need that. It's important." I'm like, "I'm not against that." So we decide on a day, we go over, and like, just imagine he was taller than me, a little bit thicker. These two guys come to your door, right? So you got me looking like a biker, and you've got him, just a bigger dude. We're both wearing, like, he's wearing his identification, I'm wearing my identification. Like, it doesn't mean anything, but for anybody looking down the street, they're like, "Are these guys undercover cops or something?" Like, because that's the other thing too. I'm wearing jeans and I'm comfortable, right? In case I need, and running shoes, in case I need to run or something splatters on me. Like, I'm always thinking that way too, right? So we go to the door, and he starts by knocking gently. And what he was doing, he'd knock and then we'd keep talking. So the first knock, nothing. The second knock gets a little bit louder. The third knock is like he's mad at somebody. And the fourth knock is full out pounding on the door and yelling, "It's me." And then he mentions his name. "We're just here to talk." He's like banging on the door. And at this point, I'm looking at him. I'm like, that's pretty freaking extreme. And I'm living in the extreme, or so I thought I was. And I'm watching him do this. So at the end of all that, he's like, "I guess they're not home." And I'm like, "You figure?" But now we've got people in the neighborhood. Like, you can see people. I'm very observant of that. You can see there are people who are kind of watching to see what's going on here. Because it's like midday or whatever. It's not, it's not early morning. It's not late afternoon. We never did get to, after that, he said, "Okay, I'll contact you again to uh to do this again," and he never did contact me. So it was cool to see that. That was cool to be part of that ride along. It's too bad. I would have loved to have seen, I would have loved to have been exposed to what it is he wanted to expose me to, because he felt that there'd be power there. He also wanted to make a new connection with the family and say, "Listen, this guy here standing beside me, he's not here to mess with you. He's not. He's here to help you. So take full advantage of whatever it is he's offering, because you may think that he's here to cause problems. He's not here to cause problems. So he was going to vouch for me in an official capacity. Um, Never happened.
Such a critical fluency. Such a critical fluency. Students that left regular schooling because of suspension and expulsion came to me in Access when I was there. My program was specifically set up to support students that were on suspension or expulsion. I can remember professional learning moments prior to me when I was in that role, and they would say the name of the place, Access, and people were like, where is that? There was no bridge from where they were sitting in the classroom. If there's no, I'll say this in a I'll make it more declarative. If there's no bridge of understanding and support from the classroom to the other spaces where kids are doing school, then there's no way that we can look at school as a comprehensive way, like a comprehensive restorative model. Not really. So if teachers don't know where these kids go when they're suspended or expelled, we're losing a lot of our possible capacity building for compassion, for creative programming in our pedagogy, because to sort of put together resources for a kid when they're no longer in front of you, that's a challenge. We learned that during COVID, but this is even pre-COVID that I was working in that space, receiving resources from a homeschool that I'm looking at. I'm like, this is entirely impossible to do away from your classroom. The only way the kid would have success is if they were directly in front of you. There's nothing about this that speaks to the kid's needs as a learner. But I do get how the ministry of expectations, I see them in there. I see them in there. So the fact that you are getting a peak of this ride along peak, it's as critical of fluency for you to know as it is for anyone in the school to know, in whatever way that they can be let to know. In the same way, it's important for them to know that you're out there doing school as well. And maybe Gary's experienced this himself in small spaces, if he's done the student success work or credit recovery work, or, anything where it's kind of like in that alternative learning. It's part of my when I get pissed off when we try and lionize the titles of alternative learning and spec ed too much, because it intentionally places it in this abstract, mystical kind of space as, okay, we get it that there's some individuals that are kind of helping the kids learn in this alternative or divergent way. But then they can also say, good, at least they're doing it because I don't have to do it as much. So I think part of, my starting point in education was I started in this kind of abstract space and working with students. When I first started teaching, I was teaching cooking. I was like working with kids that, in my particular case, that regular school hadn't worked well. I was doing culinary cooking in a behavioral program, right? So the intent there was like, okay, we've already decided for you, you're going into the trades. Like somehow the fact that they had oppositional disorder, that meant that they could only do a trade. That's faulty thinking, but that's what we were thinking at the time, right? So we created these supportive programs, but with the intent of streaming them in a different way. So as you kind of go along and you start to realize there's more to it than that. And then I start to realize that the way that we talk about certain programmings, it's funny the type of privilege that we imbue into student success, alternative education, and spec ed. There's a privilege level into it that we somehow think like there's a magic sauce there without really looking at the grind. And it's in that grind that people need to know that you're walking kids to school, that Gary's doing his student success thing, and like dudes like me brought sandwiches to Jimmy down in the park. Like that's the stuff that I feel in the latter part of my career. I'm no longer lionizing it as special or only certain people can do it. And as soon as someone says, and people have said this before, oh, thank God they have you. Thank God that you're doing that work. As soon as they create any sort of difference between the work that I do with the intent of keeping it on the margin by complementing it, that's where I'm like, no, we need to really rethink how we're talking about spec ed. We need to rethink about what we're talking about alternative education, and we need to rethink how we're talking about re-engagement. I was wondering, do you even use the term languishing anymore? That was a key term for you when you started. Does that word, as far as your purpose in your job now, is it a useful term anymore?
No, it's not. I don't use it. I don't use it. Um, I don't really like it either. Do you know how many kids are languishing?
What changed? Yeah, so I was wondering, like, so what's changed?
It's not part of my description, my job description,
Hmm.
because when it was murky waters. You got a kid right now. My job description now are kids who don't attend or who attend inconsistently. So they're like, it's almost like the universe is saying, we don't care if they're languishing, get them back in the building, get them back engaged in school, however that might look. Whereas before it was like, bring them back. And if they're already there and they're bored, spice it up. It's like, well, how am I supposed to do that when you have to remember, like, so I don't, you'll have to tell me, and the listeners have to tell me, if this makes sense. You've given me a task, but I have no power or authority to make anything happen. The only way things happen is if I collaborate with other people and they permit me and amuse my ideas. You get what I'm saying? It's like, here,
Mhm.
go do this important job. I think it's important. But remember, you have no authority. I have inferred that message come to me by different people. Here's your job description. Go and do this. But remember, you don't tell people what to do and you don't direct people. You simply make suggestions, you collaborate. That's they and I wish I could drop names of who they are. They use that word because that word is a weapon. That word means that if things, to me, it means if things aren't going well, it means I'm not being collaborative. That's what it means to me. You must be collaborative. I'm like, okay. To me, that means that I take into account the different perspectives and the different things those people are going to bring to the table. And then I try to bring something to the table that is of value, that can mesh well with the other things that have come to the table. That's what collaboration means to me. It means we're all on the same team, we're trying to move in the same direction, and we're all doing our little bit of our part. It's all slightly different, but together it works. So it's like, I don't walk around wanting to tell people this is what's happening. I certainly don't. I do make suggestions, based on a past experience. And if I'm seeing this person more than everybody else is seeing them, then I'm kind of like getting a feel for where they're at in the moment, right? Like right now, if they're being cooperative, then let's milk it in a way that's not going to break anything. But let's keep pulling so I can see where the new boundary is. Because sometimes I notice progress, but I'm like, "Whoa, how far can I push this? Like, where's the line where the kid's gonna be like, nope, I need to explore that." So that's where the trust has been comes into play because they're not gonna be like, "Whoa, why are you doing that, Mr. C?" Instead, they're like, "No, I'm not ready to do that." And then they try to explain themselves, and I respect that because it's a relationship. Um, But then, when I try to explain that to other people, they want to dismiss it because it doesn't fit with what they're going to bring to the table if they're going to bring anything to the table. And that's what
Mhm.
I'm reminded. That's what I'm reminded. You know your place, and your place is not up here. Your place is right here at the bottom. I don't know, bro. It makes me laugh now because it's such a dichotomy. Like, go and do all this heavy lifting, but then don't tell us how to lift anything. Because you're at the bottom. You're not supposed to be telling us what to do. We know what to do, but go and do what you need to do. Like, it's just, it is kind of funny. So don't get me wrong. I don't want to be in charge, but that's funny because sometimes I am. Leadership for me means taking action. I take action all the time, every day, depending on reading the situation, what's happening. I need to do something. I do it. But when it comes to leading others, being a leader that way, I'm a leader in that I take action, I make things happen, I get things done. But are people following me? I've been told don't ever expect anybody to follow you because you're not going to be the one leading the pack, but go and be a leader, which I love it because I lead my way. Nobody's going to tell me I'm not a leader. I'm a leader 110%. But when it comes to like the collaboration piece, I've been reminded you don't have any power here. And it makes me laugh because I'm sure people would say I'm interpreting it the wrong way. I'm sure of it because it won't fall into their narrative because it makes them sound like it doesn't make them look good.
Well, I was going to say the individuals that need you to be in that exact space. So it's kind of faking understanding. It's avoiding understanding, right? Because because if you do choose to understand it, then you also choose to be changed. Like it kind of happens because the fight against change is just like change will happen, as they say. So, hmm,
My favorite is when
hmm,
people take advantage of knowing that I'm down here. They take advantage.
hmm,
They abuse their power,
hmm.
and some have been.
And then sort of operate in a way like, but that's how the system works,
Yeah,
right? They couch it behind that. And you can sort of come back on sort of ethical grounds, but it'd be kind of cool if you didn't use that item number 11 to compel something to happen because the tools are there. It doesn't mean you have to sort of operate that way. We already know that the system is sort of cantilevered in favor of certain individuals and certain ways of thinking.
I recently had a situation, and I will not speak about it here in any way where anybody will understand. But what I will say is I was reminded politely, and this was not a power play, but I was reminded the principal has authority over this and this. And so you must operate, you must operate following the policy and procedure. So I clarified and I said, based on my understanding, that means that all of this falls on the principal. And the response was, that's correct. And I was like, okay, that's cool because that means that even though I'm invested and involved in a situation, if you're telling me in this particular instance of this situation, all the responsibility falls on the principal, I got no problem bringing that to them. I got no problem saying, hey, this is what's happening. I'm giving it to you. And then when they say why, because I've been instructed to give it to you. Well, who instructed you? These people instructed me. Because the last time this happened, I tried to lead and not in a way where I'm like, I know everything, I'm going to do everything. I tried to like pick up pieces that I felt were mine. So I was being responsible. But I'm told now, no, don't touch those pieces. They belong to the principal. And I'm like, yeah, one less thing for me to worry about, one less thing for me to have to deal with, even though I believe ethically and morally I should be I should be there to assist, but I've been told no, it belongs to the principal. And I clarified, all of this belongs, yes, okay, not a problem. I will give it to them in that instant, and then I will step back and just step back and wait for instructions. Um, because for some of the principals I work with, they are, I believe they are so grateful for the role that I have and the how I take my job seriously and I do things that they can't do or get to because they're in the building running a school. So like, okay, thank you for picking that up. Thank you for putting that down. I appreciate that. Thanks for keeping me in the loop. But now it's like with this one, for me, it's one of those when you experience something and there's growth and learning from it. Now I know. Now I know, even though it doesn't make 100% sense in my position that the principal grab all that, it's okay. I've been directed. Here it is. It's all yours and I'm stepping away. I'm not helping with this. Why? I've been instructed. This is your responsibility. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can call my principal and she'll tell you. And I'm here. So if you want to direct me, and I'll make sure I document that direction and I share that with my principal. Because the last thing I want ever is for somebody to say, Roland's not doing his job. That is like horrible to me. It is. It's bad because I have one job. I want to make sure I'm doing it.
Yeah, I like the idea of Roland's not doing what I asked him to, which is a little different framing of that, right? Because part of that, then it's very clear that you were instructed to do a thing and it becomes competing agendas, right? It's just sometimes, and I get that there'll be somebody that thinks that there's a part of your job that you should be doing, but sometimes that's just because the previous person overstepped, right? Somebody else was doing it a certain way before, so the assumption like that's how it's going to move forward.
And there have been some times where people really are trying to push more stuff on me because it's easier for me to do it than for them. But in those instances, I've talked to my principal flat out, black and white. How are we dealing with this? And my principal has given me direction. And I'm sticking with that direction. It's funny because I'll go to the point of I'll say to the other people, unless my principal changes the direction she's given me, I'm not doing this. And there's been a couple of really interesting times where I've said to them, I don't care what you want. I've been instructed by my principal. This is not happening until these other things happen. And they're not happening. Therefore, I'm not involved. And it's said in jest, and there's relationship. If there was no relationship, the principal would instruct me, and then I go and call my principal and say, this is what's happening right now. And we don't have a relationship where I can push back. If I push back, they're going to say I'm being insubordinate, and I certainly don't want to go there. So, hey, boss, this is what's going. Can you please direct me or advise me? And I think I know my boss would probably say, hang up the phone. I'm going to call the principal right now and talk to them. Okay, perfect. But I'm like, no, uh-uh. These three things must happen first. They're not happening. I'm standing here with you. They're not happening. I'm not involved. Unless my principal sends me an email right now that says, do it. I'm not doing it. Or a superintendent tells me to do it. I'm not doing it. I've been instructed not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about doing favors and not being friends. And no, I've been instructed. And trust me, I don't have that many instructions. My boss is not raining on me 24/7 with all kinds of rules and understandings and procedures. No, we have procedures for certain things because they're necessary. And then I've been given the ability to trust my professional judgment and operate as a professional in collaboration with all these other people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like, oh man, I'm bugging my principal again with a question. It's like, so I try not to bother her with questions in terms of like leadership responsibility stuff. I pick up what's in front of me and I run with it unless there are certain boundaries with that, and then there are certain instructions where I've been told, okay, this is not to happen again. This is how it's going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's cool. I can live with that. I'll do that. Nobody's micromanaging me. And if they try, then they don't understand what I'm trying to do because it's very fluid. Like at a school I was at yesterday, there's a staff member who used to work with my wife. And I don't really know her, but I know her to say hello. So as a student and I are walking in the building, this staff member outside with their class doing whatever they're doing. And later that morning, I get a text from my wife, and she's like, "So and so texted me and said like she saw you doing this, and she really didn't believe that you walked kids to school. Like she thought it was a joke." And I responded and told her it's not a joke. Like he goes to the house, he's made arrangements, he will walk and talk with the kid. Like part of it's building relationship, part of it is like, let's go, you need to move, you need to see the sun, you need to breathe the air. Like there's lots of layers, but what it looks like to everybody else is, oh, Roland's just walking kids to school. It's like, well, it's not that simple. But it's funny because this person's like, I saw him again, he walked in with a kid. He really does that job. What is his job? um and it brings a smile to my face because If you're going to micromanage me and you're going to like really lock me in, I can't do my job because it's so fluid. It's fluid. It's like and dynamic. You just don't know what's going to happen. This kid was supposed to take the bus to school. The bus didn't show up. So I'm literally I was working, I was on my computer doing something, and I get an email from this dad. He's like, "The bus didn't come. The kid's at home." I'm like, my thing is, okay, everybody's safe. That's good. I was like, no problem. I'm going to be in that space in about 30 minutes and we'll just walk to school. We weren't supposed to walk. I wasn't supposed to walk the student. The student was supposed to get on the bus. The student was ready to go to school on their own. And I was going to show up, check in, walk the student home. It's like, okay, this is what's happening today. And it's hilarious because when I got to the house, the dad and I were laughing. I was, guess what? I'm like, I had a plan. Everything was in like we had a plan. The universe said no. No. And so I said to the kid, I guess for some weird reason, I believe somewhere along the way, you were not supposed to get on that bus and go to school for that first hour without me. Here I am. I got my running shoes on and literally I popped the trunk. I was putting my running shoes on, right? Because I got shoes, I got hats, I got chairs, I got umbrellas, I got food. My trunk is it's all fully loaded. We're walking. And we get to school, student goes to class, the special education teacher comes up to me and says, "Oh my God, I totally forgot to email you. I've been emailing people all morning about don't mark this kid absent, don't do this because the bus didn't come." She goes, "I'm really sorry. I totally forgot, Roland, that like you're part of the mix." I'm like, "It's not a problem. Dad let me know right away the bus did not show up." And let me give credit to this kid. So this kid's at a bus stop with like I don't know how many other people. After about 5 minutes, a bunch of kids leave. They just go home. They're like, "The bus isn't coming. We're going home." Another 5 minutes passes, and a kid texts mom, and then mom comes, and a bunch of kids pile in a car, and they say to him, "You want to come with us? We're going to school. Get in the car." He's like, "I'm not getting in the car." He texts his dad and says, "Dad, everybody's gone. There's nobody at the bus stop anymore, and the bus isn't here. The bus isn't here. No bus came." Dad's like, "Come home." And then I get the email. It's like we're talking about a kid that struggled with a lot, and the kid kept it together. The kid was thinking clearer, not panicking, not being upset. So, what do you think I talked about on that walk to school, that 20-25 minute walk? I talked about the kid's resilience. I talked about the kid's growth. I talked about, you know, um, I was planning on walking alone today. And now I get to walk with you again. We get to chat about video games and stuff. Part of all that good stuff comes from being allowed to be fluid, being allowed to like have to replan on the spot. Sometimes people really want to box me in. I can't be boxed in. As I've talked to the people at Alt Ed, we live in the gray. Finding black and white is pretty tough sometimes, and it seems to be rare. It's black and white. I'm not going into a kid's house unless unless I'm with a police officer or a child and family services protection officer. I'm not going into a kid's house and I'm not driving a kid anywhere. Those are
Mhm.
black and white. I'm
Yep.
not doing it. So, um, other than that, there's so much gray. It's unbelievable. But I'm told I live in the gray. All dead. We live in the gray. We do things differently. You know that because you still spend time and I think you're a gray kind of guy. You like the
I'm
fire
gray.
and stuff. Yeah, you're
Look at me. I'm gray, silver. I'm like premium gray. And all I've done is I'm getting close to retiring in that space. I'm starting to realize that there's just no leaving it. And even the next position that I'm going to, it's gray. I'm going into a position where there's going to be rebuilding. There's going to be adjustments. There's going to be like everything about it. From my understanding, right now, some of the early conversations is that they need someone to be able to comfortably exist in the gray to figure out what's best for these kids, what's best for the kids, what's the best programming, best connection, best approaches, you know, all of that best practice will only come from settling into the gray. And I expect the first year is going to be like fog on top of gray. It's going to be rain. There's going to be, because changes, you come in and learn what you need to learn in order to start to plan the changes that might be useful. Like there's no hard and fast list I come in with. And I told you how I end my year, in the classrooms that I'm in, if I'm staying there, it's sitting in the empty space and doing a little bit of visioning. This one will be a critical um meditative moment for me to settle into when I get to see, because I haven't seen the classroom yet. It's not, I will have to really do some hustle to actually have any direct contact with the kids yet. It's just, that's kind of one of those factors that can't be manufactured, right? Like because I'm not a teacher at that school yet. It's an entirely different school. But it's likely I can get to see some of the learning resources that are in the room right now. I'll get to see the room. I will likely get to meet the staff that I'll be working with, the special education department that I'm moving into. So those will all be useful. But I will tell you, the most powerful thing that I will be able to do for me will be able to sit in the center of that room, and no joke, for an hour. I will. I've got my book. I'll have my journal right there, and I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, what is it that I see in this room? What is it that I don't see in this room? What is it that would be amazing that in the past I thought I want to try in community classrooms? What is it that I want to leave behind? What is it that I want to make sure I don't put into this room right away? And this is a very strange gray process, because some of it is informed and some of it is just inspired, innovative, and imagined. But I kind of track all my thinking. And then over the summer, if I get more data, I try. But there's going to be very much like a rickety launch in September, because if I'm in the gray, my students will be in the gray too. So then I have to help navigate gray for students, right? Because I can't expect it to be super clear. If the kids are willing to play and learn and kind of do all the stuff that I imagine into the space, fantastic. But I've also come to understand that that's only as it is when it is. There's nothing, like, it could change at any moment. Change will happen. And when that does, I'm back in the gray again. So yeah, I'm just a couple neighborhoods over, bro. Just looking at it in a different perspective, I guess.
I love that. Ramona says gray is good, and
As the elder member of our fan club, I take that as an aspiring statement from our elder statesperson.
um, it's funny though. I think. Well, I wonder. Do you spend a lot of time trying to make the gray black and white for people around you? That it's okay for you
No,
to live in the gray, but not, for
it
everybody else.
depends. I think I do more work to make it more black and white for me. I don't, because I can't assure that anyone, like, I've done things in class afterwards, and the CYW is like, yeah, I got no clue why you did that, but it was really effective. But I don't know how you did that. And then there's other times like, I don't know how you thought to do that, and that was terrible. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Thanks. I appreciate it. Like, I'll work with that, right? And sometimes it's just that it was a 1.0 of a lesson or an activity, and um you got to break it. You got to break it to use it sometimes. Like, you got to fail at it to sort of like replicate it. You got to be a little embarrassed at how edgy you went in order to feel confident with the tool or the toy the second time around. So I think it's that, every time I try to create black and white for myself, I probably, if I'm being completely honest, there's no stasis there. Like, the black and white doesn't mean I stay there. It just means that maybe I've created a path to the next gray. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. That kind of worked. How do I break it in order to make it better? So it's constantly in that iterative state. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I love having the other adult in the room to be able to take that direct feedback. And it takes a while to build a relationship where the CYW I work with is like, yeah, straight up, that was great. Do it again. I'm like, don't know if I can. I was kind of just like going with the moment, but let me make a note, put a post-it note there. I'll put some comments in my lesson plan in Google Docs. Um, because the teachable moment, we often think about that as a linear unidirectional experience, as in you notice something that the students are doing and you kind of look at it and say, this is good for them because this is a teachable moment, like this needs to break. But if you make that, if you create reciprocity there, you realize that that teachable moment can actually be you teaching some, you being taught yourself something. um and to say yes to one means to say no to the other. So you spend too much time saying this is a teachable moment for the kids, then you just may be losing out on what is it actually teaching you about this moment too. So yeah, just to reframe the teachable moment there. And I'll be gray. I'll be gray until I retire. And then likely I'll still be gray after that too. But I like that. I'm okay with that.
It's been a really cool experience for me to learn to be more gray,
Hmm.
because being classroom teacher, there is gray, but it's way more black and white than what I'm doing now,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yep. It's true.
Well, bro,
Take a sip, take a break. We'll chat again another time.
you bet. Thanks
Hmm.
to Ramona and Gary for the comments. We appreciate it.
We didn't quite make it to Jocko Willick uh, status of 3 hours and change for a pod. But hey,
Uh, what are
an
you
hour
gonna
and a
do?
half, an hour and a half is fine. An hour and a half is fine. These moments are far more structured than we make it seem because we know we can do this on a Saturday morning.
You
Well,
bet.
sorry, we know that we can do it because we're doing it. It's because we didn't talk this morning, like saying, yeah, let's drop in an hour 36. Let's drop it an hour 36. We didn't actually plan it out. I've been fine. You remember earlier in the week when I sent you that painting? I kind of like the lettering, that calligraphic tool that on Insta.
Yes.
I would love, I would love to be a graffiti artist. I think I would love it. I follow quite a few of them on Insta, and I really am constantly fascinated with font and typography. Like I love it. I love playing with words, and I like writing words too. So everything about just kind of treating words as art form, I like that. So yeah, that's just me messing with kind of like a picture and putting some text over top. It was a sunset. That's what's actually behind there. It's a sunset and a tree and a mountain range that I had watercolored on a post-it note, stuck it to a page, and then started playing with some acrylic paint markers. So that's it.
So, which is, I love it. I always enjoy the art. Um, are you gonna dive into graffiti type stuff? Like, do you have a
Yep.
plan? Yeah.
I
Okay.
do. Yeah, I gotta get first and foremost, I have to start experimenting with spray cans because that's kind of like that's as they say, the bread and butter, right?
Hmm.
You gotta have spray can. It's funny. I'm gonna do a hat tip to Roy and Lee. So like 4 or 5 years ago, Roy and Lee, if anyone, I recommend you're listening to this, check out Roy and Lee. I don't know if his Instagram is locked or unlocked, but he's a polymath. Like there's just a lot of cool stuff he's good at. I've been watching him get better and better at skateboarding for years now. He's also he's a musician, he's an educator in my board. He's now aspiring rock climber, like he's doing indoor rock climbing. So he's into a lot of really cool stuff: skateboarding, music, rock climbing. And his family's just a fascinating crew too. But about 5 years ago, he was doing a lot. He's an instrumentalist, guitar. I think I've seen him play ukulele as well, but he went through a phase of creating a lot of house music and working on loops and different hooks. And there was he put up, there's a crew that they, I don't, kind of like an ed camp, but for music mixers. And it has pop-ups. They'll do pop-ups around and you show up with your kit and basically it's like here was the event. He posted up he's going to this event. I forget what it was called. And he he posted up in us at on one of his feeds. I'm like, "Hey, this sounds really cool." And it was downtown Toronto, right near Kensington Market, and it was in a shop where when you walked in, they had like 7 long, like, banquet tables, and around it were all these DJs, and they all had their different some had a keyboard, some had an, laptop, some had, like, different mixers and, uh, uh, um, like, the button mixers. Have you ever seen the people that can do that? Like, it's basically all samples and loopers, and they're and then that they can play it over and over again, and then a, turntable, and then they had so it was kind of like a, imagine like a spoken word competition because they said, okay, first round, here's what we're going to do. And you're going to get to play your piece. And then they said, okay, now this is only going to be for this specific kind of technology. And then it's only going to be for this specific technology. And then at the end, they said, okay, here's the sample that everyone has to build something off of. And they play, it was like this really cool kind of bluesy, kind of a choked voice, like, um, Waits-ish kind of like a voice, and everybody had to do something with it, bend it, whip it around. And this shop was one part kind of urban culture, whatever that means to somebody, like t-shirts and kind of sticker and skateboards, a little bit hip hop representation there, but also massive representation for graffiti artists. So they had the Krylon cans, they had the caps and the specific like if you're doing this, right? You're not well, you can just go to Canadian Tire and buy spray can, but you actually have different spray tips that nibs that you would put on for different dispersions and different treatments, and then you have all your stencils that you could have too. So there's a really cool culture thing and technique thing that I've been kind of just passively paying attention to. But I think it might be time for me to try this out. I don't know what the next step will be, apart from I have to try painting with spray cans. And I've met some cool artists that in person, and it's just how sometimes I just take walks and I'm kind of like I'll talk to people, that cluffing factor. I've actually done that in some towns and kind of like walked in behind a building and there's like a kid there tagging a building. And like they sort of some of them are cavalier. They're like, yeah, what's up? And they just finish their picture. And then others, you can see that they're a little nervousness. I'm like, yo, I like the art form. And they're like, what? Now that's pretty prized to actually come across. Like if you come across someone that's tagging or putting in, they're bombing a building, like that because it tends to happen in times where they're not going to get noticed because this type of art installation is not legal, right? It's not. Last time I was in Montreal, I got to meet two different graffiti artists, but they had been paid to do murals. So they're not going anywhere. And it was cool to talk to them to see because they're showing me that they crack open their sketchbook and they're like, look at here's all the drawings. You're like, wow, like, and then you're kind of looking at the sketch and looking at the wall, like, man, how that translates so well to a large wall like that big. So, long answer. Next call you get from me might be from jail. It's like, Chids, I need you to come bail me out. I was arrested tagging a building. No, that won't happen. But I am curious. I am curious to see if I can find a space in this to try doing some bigger pieces, which will likely I'm just going to do on I've thought this out more than I've actually shared with you. I'm actually going to buy plywood. So I'll just buy plywood from I'll do some sketches and then I'll buy plywood and I'll start off by doing it in my garage. I'm going to start off by doing it in my garage. I haven't told my spouse that yet. But yeah.
If you call me to get you out of jail, I doubt that I'm dropping you off at home. I suspect you're coming right
Don't you
back
want
to
that
my
story though? I
no.
want that story. Don't you want that story? Like, the next conversation, you're like, guess what? I picked Clough up from the police station the other day.
You know what sucks about that is our job in terms of like,
it's it is a limiting factor, right? I don't know.
yeah.
Would I lose my job for getting charged as a, whatever that is
I
for
think if
becoming
you
a
were
graffiti
found
artist?
guilty, well, I don't even know. I don't think you'd lose your job right away because
Somebody do the OCT. Well, there's lots of ways, right? I don't know. My union might have an
you'd
issue with
definitely
it.
be reprimanded somehow, some way, but at the very
Yeah.
least, I don't believe you lose your job until you're actually found guilty in a court of law. Because
Mhm.
I know I've been aware of this is weird, but like people who have gotten into trouble, teachers, and kind of follow them, and then the minute that they it comes back that they're guilty, then that's when they get their notice. You've been released because
Yeah.
like the court just said you're guilty, so you were
But
done. We can't
that's
employ you.
but that's the general way to do it, right? Like I think even that's why even that's why Trump's still running for president. Because there's an element of that, like it's not enough guilty for them to
Right.
action it yet, right? So yeah, but it is something I want to try.
Okay.
Yeah, Alice Fazuli down in the Hammer down in Hamilton. I followed her for ages, and she's
Mhm.
a multidiscipline artist. And to anybody who's down in Hamilton Way, she often offers up session. This is where I one of the things that after going to this session with Royan, I connected with her on Insta, and she was offering up kids graffiti artist sessions, like training kids on how to do it. Um, Matthew Zaremba, I think he's out of Boston. He's also like a graffiti artist, but does a lot of really cool letter art. So they become kind of like they've kept the waters bubbling and making me wonder like a lot of the pieces that I even do on small scale are pretty abstract. Like so they lend themselves well to using a bold type of medium like spray paint and plywood, like large kind of panels. So I don't know if I like, yeah, like maybe I'll wait till I'm retired in 65 before I start finding scaffolding and putting my chasing squirrels tag on bridges and billboards. But you'll know,
Um,
I just told you, I just gave it away. You find a chasing squirrels tag somewhere, you're
I
like,
know it was you.
oh crap, Clough did it. They'd have to find this episode though to find the evidence, right?
I thought for sure you were going to say that when that person ran children's workshops for graffiti art that you signed up and you were like Kramer
I
at the
did. I
dojo.
did. I
Oh,
tried. I tried. I actually asked, and she said no. They're just for like what she was doing, like 11 to 14-year-olds. I'm
but it'd
like, are
be
you ever
hilarious.
gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the only like 50-year-old sitting in the room. I said, do you ever offer like adult classes? And they hadn't yet. They hadn't yet done it. It was specifically like arts camp for kids, but like hip hop culture,
Mm.
just broadening hip hop culture, right? Yeah, Alice Fizzle. She's abominable ink. She also
Oh,
goes by on Instagram. Yeah, a worthwhile follow. DJ, videographer, digital artist, um, pretty good cook too. Some of the things they post up, pretty good cook. Really interesting person.
nice, nice.
Yep.
Well, we made it halfway to Jocko Willing podcast
Yep.
fame.
Did Gary stay? Is Gary still here?
It says there are two people here. I'm assuming it's Gary and Ramona.
Um,
Ramona about 8 hours ago said, "Great convo. Have a great week."
well, she just left the laptop running. Yeah, she
Oh
just left
yeah,
the
as
laptop.
she's
Yeah,
baking. And
that's okay.
then Gary said, "Great convo. Loves the authenticity."
Spread the word, Gary.
Yeah.
Spread the word.
As
Do a
soon
little
as
do a little bit of marketing work for us. Yeah.
as soon as Gary says Chidiac, that's when people are going to stop listening to him, right?
Maybe.
Hey, Roland is Roland.
All the wrong people will start listening.
All the wrong people. Yeah.
And I
It'd
like
be,
those because all my friends are heathens anyway. So
but it would be fun. Ramona's still
oh,
here.
still here. Still
It'd be
here.
fun to have some
That's
convo about
Ramona
this
running
on the
back to her
podcast.
laptop because she's doing something on the other side of the house for a Saturday. It's like, oh, can't let Clough say that. I'm here. I'm here.
Um,
Catch it before they shut it down. Ramona, we're happy to have you. Happy to have you.
it'd be epic if we had people on here who would talk back and push in
Mhm.
a negative way. Like, let's that exploding hand thing, and I posted the exploding door. Let's do it, man.
I like the yeah, I like the one on the left more. I think because there's no frame around it.
Mm,
That's I kind of like that. I like that there's the and I like that the frame. I like that I see more of the door. I like also that the actual explosion around the door on the left is less militaristic. Does that make sense?
yeah.
The one on the right is very geometric, which I get, but it also looks less like the door blowing open as opposed to just a bomb went off and the door happened to open. That works too though. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Spread the love around. We're happy to have the room's big. Conversation is wide and meandering. And me and Chids are a lot. Well, we're gorgeous according to our posts, I'm fancy, he's dancy.
And
and we're both
Midjourney is awesome.
yeah, Midjourney has made us both incredibly gorgeous, incredibly gorgeous.
Okay, this was season 6, episode 35, number 253 of the Decoded Podcast. Thanks for checking us out, and we'll catch you the next time we're back in this space. Oh, sending out on calls while watching you on my phone. No baking to
On
Dow.
calls, don't tell me that's administrative stuff on the weekend,
She's working. She's a boss now. She has to work all the time.
and she's at the driving range at the same time.
And she says she's not baking, but she probably is.
It's all good.
She's a boss. I like that. Ramona the boss.
Yep.
Okay.
Peace, man.
Peace.